Believe we are started. Hello, everyone who's joining us. Thank you. Welcome back to the second annual check-in, MetaCell, where we check in on the AI in the life sciences. And this time around, a lot has happened. We are going to be checking in on what's happened since January in 2025. My name is Stephen Larson. I'm the CEO and co-founder of a company called MetaCell. If you don't know us, we build custom software in the life sciences. We build imaging platforms. We do data science. And we just celebrated our 14th year in business a week ago. Yeah, it's kind of crazy. So, more to say about that later. Today, we're going to have three amazing speakers help give us insight into what's going on in this space. And they're all folks that I've known for quite a while. Sort of chosen them carefully to help you guys navigate this really overwhelming world of developments in AI and life science. So what's going to happen is I'll have them introduce themselves, and then I'm going to give a bit of my perspective on what's happened at the beginning of this year to kind of set the stage, and then we'll have each speaker go afterwards. So I will ask Mary, Sean, and Justin now to introduce themselves.
All right. Hi, everyone. So I'm Mary Phillips. I'm a neuroscientist, and so a few years ago, I left my postdoctoral position to work at ZEISS Research Microscopy. So now I'm the business development manager for neuroscience there.
Great. I'm glad to be here. I'm Sean Hill. I'm a neuroscientist as well and computational modeler. Also faculty at the University of Toronto and EPFL in Switzerland. But I'm here talking about some of the work that we're doing in Senscience, where I'm a CEO and co-founder.
Hey folks, Justin Kiggins here. A neuroscientist by training, but for the past 6 years or so, most of my time has been spent building products and tools and open source tools for imaging, data analysis, data visualization in the computational biology and systems biology space, and currently supporting some of CZI's work to build virtual cells. So excited to chat with everyone.
Amazing. All right, you guys, I look forward to your presentations. I will kick it off now, talking a little bit about what's happened. So we have sort of decided to do this as a bit of a series. So about a year ago, we did our first installment of the AI and Life Sciences webinar, and that is now available on YouTube. So you guys can feel free to go check it out. At the time, I also gave kind of some thoughts and some key concepts for those of us still coming up to speed on things like generative AI, transformers, how to kind of understand this new era of AI in some context. But I didn't give a lot of specifics of the overview of developments that were happening, which is really what I'd like to do this time. But yeah, feel free to check that out from a year ago if you want to kind of catch up on some of the fundamentals here, especially for folks, we're all kind of cross-training ourselves. Some of us are maybe more life science experts. Some of us are more AI experts. So there's a lot of lingo that can get lost in between those two things. That event was really trying to help have everybody kind of understand both sides. So that was last time. So since then, quick advertisement for a free newsletter that I'm going to be kind of basing the rest of what we're going to do. So starting in January, we started distributing what we call the Electric Sheep Report. For those Philip K. Dick fans, you get the joke. If you don't, it's just a fun name. But what we did is every week we decided to gather the most interesting AI and life science developments from around the web that happened only in that past week. So like time limited to just that week. And to make a very concise summary of that in just a set of links that we send out for free every week. And it's been a really cool exercise. So I've personally been curating it. And together with my team here, we've been looking at like what's actually interesting and what's not. And so what I'm going to talk about today are some of the insights that I've gleaned just by like releasing this thing for this first half of the year. Also, just for us, we've done some consulting strategy engagements in this topic in some of our professional work, and we've done several data science projects that are trending more towards AI. So that kind of is where my knowledge base is coming from for what I'm going to present today. And yeah, so we're going to look at the big picture state of the field over the last 6 months. So let's jump in. Oh yeah, this is what it looks like, by the way, the electric sheep report. We'll throw a link in the webinar chat if you haven't subscribed and you want to check it out. All right. So I'm going to break this down across pharma, healthcare, biotech, and academia. Okay. I'm going to start with pharma, a place where we have done quite a bit of work over the last 14 years. So AI-driven drug design and discovery in particular is a thing that is now happening. Relative to when we started this company 14 years ago, this entire slide feels like science fiction. It feels like complete science fiction, and yet in 2025, these things are coming true. So we're actually seeing things like AI-designed drugs now in clinical trials, and in particular, organizations like isomorphic labs are doing things like this now. We're seeing AI accelerating the design of novel chemical entities, antibodies, and targeting things that were previously thought to be undruggable. And we're seeing AI's role in optimizing informatics for machine learning and generative AI in drug discovery. We're seeing both those things. We're seeing both AI optimizing informatics, and we're seeing generative AI coming into drug discovery in many ways. So there's lots of toolkits that are able to work with genomes now that didn't exist. A lot of things that are being built off the back of transformer architectures that have really been inspired by all of the amazing progress that we're all experiencing with tools like ChatGPT. So that's kind of coming into this space of drug discovery in a big way in this first half of the year. We're also seeing AI being applied to enhance and improve clinical trial running. So in particular, outcome prediction, like how is it going to go, right? So a lot of work training on past clinical trials to figure out what did work and what didn't work, and then doing a better job of predicting how they're going to come in the future. And then also optimization around patients. The industry is very excited, and you're starting to see it come out more and more. The tighter that you can rein in your patient selection using AI, the less your drug trial may cost and still get a positive outcome. So we're seeing several enhancements along that are harnessing things like LLMs and deep learning models. Lab automation and robotics. So we're actually, again, science fiction. It's just like, really? But seriously, yeah, the integration of AI with robotics is also accelerating drug discovery processes. And we're seeing several examples of that coming out in the field. So very exciting developments in pharma. I want to keep going, but those things are notable. And if you check out the newsletter, you'll see several of these like specifics that are coming out all the time. But on the healthcare side, so we're seeing AI enhancing diagnostics and medical imaging. Here's some specific examples. So just coming out from the newsletter, dementia detection. We saw a new AI tool detecting 9 types of dementia from a single scan. We're seeing myocardial infarction mapping using deep learning models that can be done using electrocardiography. We are seeing deep learning being used in many ways for brain imaging data analysis. I'll just sort of flag that. That's, of course, exciting to the neuroscientists in the room, but there's several examples of this both on the academic side and in the clinic. And we're seeing that some of that brain mapping software for surgical planning receiving FDA clearance. And so AI, has reached the era of FDA, right? So regulatory is, starting to have ways of dealing with these things, even though, right, it's a heady time and we all should, proceed with some caution. We're also seeing personalized medicine getting into the picture, in particular for genetic diseases. So that's a place where AI models that can take into account different genetic diseases are really a growth area. And then in terms of actual delivery of clinical service and improved patient outcomes, we're also seeing in particular rural areas benefiting from AI and machine learning, places where it's hard to reach and where there's a lot of special cases. That's not the default case. We're seeing ways in which, really interesting ways in which LLMs are being applied to kind of tailor solutions to the very idiosyncratic aspects of rural area clinical service delivery. So quite exciting there. In biotech, we're seeing, and this is a lot of examples of AI being used to design new proteins, predict their locations, and improve enzyme function. I just want to say on protein engineering and design, I was at a conference recently where a scientist walked me through a very detailed protein design analysis. And when I asked him if AlphaFold 3 had been useful to him, he pointed out that for the last 10 minutes, he had been using AlphaFold visualizations on his poster the entire time. And I hadn't noticed because it's just now being so effortlessly used all the time. It is now the standard for this kind of thing. And of course, we're talking about a technology that did not exist 5 years ago, right? So certainly wasn't being used to this extent. So really exciting stuff happening in that space. Omics data analysis. So we're seeing AI platforms being developed to analyze multi-omics data for target discovery and other applications. Sapio Sciences is one that you can look up, but there's actually several in this space that are of interest. Antibody discovery, a little bit different than protein engineering and design, but like discovering antibodies is also being powered by AI now. And again, there's a shout out to an org called AbSci there, where you're seeing some breakthroughs happening in de novo design, streamlining processes. And then CRISPR, also CRISPR. What could go wrong, right? But generative AI is being applied to gene editing in the world of CRISPR. I don't know that we've gotten those things through FDA approval yet, but I think it's only a matter of time before some of that goes on. So it's it's hard to track all these things, I think, when you're in your little corner of the universe. But when you take a step back and you start seeing these things all happening at once, it's like, wow, it's exciting times for the field. All right, I'm going to round this out with academia. So in academia, we're seeing collaborations happening between academic institutions and big research powerhouses in industry. So in particular, we're seeing Yale doing collaborations, and we're seeing Google Research and DeepMind doing lots of collaborations, pushing boundaries in cellular biology and genomics. We may hear more about that from some of our speakers also, maybe some involvements in different collaborations, but I'll let them speak to that. We're seeing AI models being used to map language processes in the brain and understanding the genome. So shout out to now there's Alpha Genome. So if you familiar with AlphaFold, you may have seen recent developments in the last, I think, month, maybe 6 weeks, announcing an Alpha Genome, which is now doing the same thing in the space of genomics, which is really exciting and crazy. And so we're also uncovering hidden patterns in genes that are related to disease there. Now, we will say, and I think later on we're going to hear some more sobering thoughts about the application of AI, which is very important to highlight. There is, especially in the academic space, increased concern, appropriately, about research quality. So it's now a lot easier to write an academic journal article. However, that we are picking up on early signs that this is impacting actually the quality of the papers that are coming out. So it's like submissions are up, but overall quality may not be up as much. And that is something that is shaking things up in the academic space, and will be interesting to see how we kind of come out of this on the other side. But lastly, in terms of talent, where there are many institutions, EMBL is one that comes to mind, that are focusing on integrating AI across life sciences through philanthropy. And there's this emphasized need for folks that understand how to use AI appropriately in that talent pool. So while there's been also a classic concern that AI is going to replace people and replace researchers, and I think that's a fair concern. I think more now what we're starting to see is what are the best ways that the existing researchers that we have can really be harnessing these tools to level themselves up and be smarter. For me, the picture that comes to mind for those of you who are Marvel fans is the way that Tony Stark would interact with AI in this really cool way to have Jarvis or whatever help him either build the next suit or, in the case of the Endgame movie, actually figure out the secret to time travel. And I really enjoyed how, that's a case where a scientist who has the cleverness and the creativity to think through all of the various, the high dimensional space of research they have, can leverage AI in a very advanced way to help drive research and have this really powerful collaboration between AI and the researcher. So I think that's the kind of thing that we're seeing needed going forward, and research institutions are making investments in infrastructure to kind of supercharge their researchers and make sure they're not left behind in this case. Okay, so that's my intro. I'm going to stop there now. And I just sort of, as I turn it over to Mary next, I'll just say, please feel free to put your questions into the chat all throughout this discussion. We're going to have all the speakers kind of make their comments, and then we're going to leave ample time for Q&A at the end, which you can pose to me, you can pose to any one of our speakers, but we'd really like to have a robust discussion here today. So please do that. And without further ado, I will hand it over to Mary Phillips.
Great. Awesome. Thank you for that really great background. So let me start sharing here. So, all right. Okay, I believe I'm sharing that screen. Yes. Okay, so I want to take a quick second just to say that was a fantastic overview. And if you've been reading the reports from Stephen, so I mean, every day there's something new coming out, right? And so what I'm actually going to talk to you guys today isn't necessarily about the granularity of the new tools that have come out in the past 6 months, but more about how we can make those usable and democratization, right? So other people will be able to speak a little bit more about granularity. So, all right, fix this really quick. Sorry. Okay. So my role at ZEISS, right? So I'm a neuroscientist, and I now work at ZEISS Microscopy, and I get to partner with researchers. And what I'm most excited about is I get to support their imaging and analysis workflows. So I sit at a fantastic kind of unique position. I'm between tool makers and end users, and I get to advocate for tailored solutions that can really help scientists to do their work. So what we're starting to see and what's exciting is that now AI isn't just about automation or these tools, right? It's about assistance, and it's about the kind of AI that gets to meet researchers exactly where they are. And what I wanted to do was take a moment and a step back to talk about why this is important. And we need to understand a little bit about the history to truly grasp where we are and what makes that so exciting. So not to date myself, but my first exposure to machine learning and neuroscience, I was working on Java. So this was around 2010. So Java was an early tool for behavioral scoring. It was, and it was cutting edge then, right? It had a GUI, but the training was kind of slow and manual, really parameter heavy. And to be honest, it took about a decade to have some new tools to come out, right? So like when Simba or Deep Lab Cut emerged, like we were pumped, right? Like something new on this. They were a leap forward. It was faster. They were a bit easier to use, right? But it actually still required a lot of technical expertise and trial and error to get kind of going for you. I really struggled with this. And during this time, I'm also imaging. I was doing immunohistochemistry. And while I'm doing immunohistochemistry, there actually weren't that many usable AI tools, okay, so for image analysis. That shifted a bit in 2021 with CellPose. So that was a generalistic segmentation model. So that opened up a lot of new possibilities. But even then, kind of getting it to work in your lab with your data required troubleshooting and the most valuable resource, time, right? So since then, the pace has really exploded, right? So we've got these things coming out every week. Segment Anything, BioImage IO, Napari. I mean, so we've gone through a lot of new tools. And we're going from months of manual annotation or scoring to pipelines that can deliver results in minutes. So that's fantastic, right? And the growth isn't slowing. We've got new tools all the time. But for me, so what's most exciting now, it's not just what the tools can do, but how fast they're evolving and what that really means for the pace of discovery, right, itself. But with all this progress, I think that the roadblocks that I mentioned before still really persist, right? So we have new tools. Let's talk about spine detectors, brain atlas registration. They're incredibly powerful for the neuroscience community. But most scientists don't have time or support to get them running in their labs. So I see actually a lot of researchers trying to put these together, trying to use them, and they can't get them to work in their own lab. And they honestly have to move on. So they have to keep making progress. And it's not because the tools aren't valuable or if they're flawed. It's because the infrastructure really isn't there to get them to work in everyone's lab. So we've got this really ironic situation, right? So we've got incredibly powerful tools. They're built by scientists, they're for scientists, but they're still out of reach for many people, right? And so that's honestly, I think, where industry's role is in this entire, in this infrastructure, right? So what we need to do is translate the open resources, the open tools into reliable, scalable solutions that can work in your lab. And so that's where I sit, right? So I push for usability. And so I'm online with scientists and I can bring the frustrations that you hear from the bench into product meetings, and we can help shape tools that scientists can actually use, right? Because you want to focus on your life science research and you're not wanting to focus on the computational side sometimes, right? So that brings us right into AI for life sciences, and there's two really big categories. So I guess conceptually first, but I'll talk about it last, is resource AI, which is really exciting. So resource-driven AI, so those are tools that help people learn, navigate, and get started. The second are results-driven AI. It's where we're most familiar, right? So this is what I all mentioned before. So in images, we've got automated segmentation, quantification, classification. So like I said, this is where most of the development has been. So they're tools, right? And we've seen massive leaps in generalizable models, so spine detectors, cell counters, and they keep improving with broader data sets. But a lot of times these only get you so far. So if your data is noisy and niche, you've got rare phenotypes or diseases, right? You need something custom. And so that's where some tools like ZEISS, Aretas comes in. So we've got cloud, where you can use a paintbrush, draw on your data, right? Super easy. And you can train a deep learning model that's tailored to your data set incredibly quickly. And then once it's trained, this goes into, so our model is ZEISS Aretas Pro. Essentially, this is just a pipeline that's shareable. And you can now link these custom models with other tools that are 3D tracing, object interactions, all those sorts of different things. So I get online, I'm going to test this out, right? I bring this data set that I remember in grad school, it took me months and months to manually annotate or circling things, right? And so I put it into Aretas Cloud, and under an hour, I had trained a deep learning model, and it starts to churn through my data automatically. So I was a bit demoralized, I'm not going to lie. That was a shot to the heart. But also it's incredibly optimistic, right? So what could I have done with this extra time in grad school? And I think that's amazing right now for scientists today, this extra time. What else can you do? And so my goals are simple, right? So I want to give researchers access to this cutting edge AI, right? In a usable tool where you don't have to be an expert. And we need to make these workflows shareable, reproducible, and supported. And we do support them, right? So I'm very much involved in this. We've got onboarding, we've got custom tutorials, and we've got real people that you talk to get started, right? But so this is baseline. This is making things accessible that have kind of come up. So what are we doing now? What's most exciting, right? And so I think that brings us now into resource-driven AI. Okay. So this is where I'm very, very pumped about this. Okay, so the new side of AI. So we've got LLM copilots, we've got phenotyping algorithms, and that's opening up new interfaces for scientists, right? So we've all been addicted to TikTok at some time or another. It's fantastic about predicting what content you want to see, right? But what if we could use that kind of engine to drive scientific workflows? Okay. So at ZEISS, we're experimenting with responsible user profiling. So that would help researchers find exactly what they need. So a student at a core might get targeted confocal tutorials. A PI with a new grant may be guided towards relevant super resolution systems, example workflows, and publications that match their model or disease. What's amazing about ZEISS, so we're 175 years old. We're an old company, and we've generated, I mean, we've got thousands of educational materials to the point where that's a lot to go through, right? So why not use AI to help surface what's actually useful for each person? So then once you're on a microscope, we've had tools like AI Sample Finder for a long time that help you start imaging quickly. But now we're taking new steps. So we've just actually this year, a few months ago, released ZEISS Copilot, which is an LLM assisted assistant inside our Zen software. So it's kind of early. I think one of the earlier versions of GPT, but I think the foundations are fantastic, and we're laying this, right? So the idea here is that you have a virtual imaging expert trained on curated knowledge, right? That's going to become really important for LLMs, is this curation. And this assistant sits beside you to answer your questions, guide your setup, and ensure you're getting your image correctly, right? So to me, this resource-driven AI now is one of the most exciting developments for life science, right? Because what that does, it's not just making new models, but it's a new way of working with and using AI tools, and it makes knowledge usable and accessible to science so they can focus on biology and not really debugging Python, right? So AI that meets you where you are. And that's kind of what I'm excited about now and how that's growing. So thanks.
Awesome. Thank you, Mary, for that excellent perspective. Yeah. So much is happening in this space, and I'm again like constantly shocked that the whole idea of this session is like maybe in 1 hour we can kind of get a sense for many things that are happening across the space, and that really helps to move things forward. All right, so let's now go on to Sean Hill.
Okay, great. Can everybody see the screen? See the slides?
Yes.
Great. So yeah, I mean, I think the lead in from Stephen and from Mary, I mean, it's all pointing to this great potential that AI can really help accelerate lab research, right? There's tremendous opportunity there. And there are examples, as we've been hearing, that you can transform how materials are discovered, drugs are developed, analysis. It can really rapidly accelerate the whole hypothesis assessment and research process. We know people are using it to draft their papers. I think this has to be, obviously done in a very responsible way. It's a certainly a grammar checker on steroids, but can really be a powerful way of organizing data, analyzing data, and accelerating this whole research, analysis, insight, and discovery loop. But I think, what I'm highlighting here is a problem that I've been running into for decades, which is that most scientific data is actually not in good shape. It's generally fragmented, it's generally unstructured, it's generally not usable by machines. We also have a massive data sharing problem, which is that there's about 80% of research data that's actually never shared, and it kind of disappears and dies. So that's really limiting the potential for AI to impact science. And I think to me, this is profound, it's urgent. the research grants that are being funded today to generate data, they're not going to be funded again. So the data that is being generated, if that's not used and available, we're throwing it away. And we're not going to have an opportunity to create it again. So I think there's, like, to me, it's one of the most urgent problems of our time. We have this massive potential to accelerate scientific progress, but we're losing it because science hasn't had an easy way and a valuable way to get the scientific data in a good form, cleaned up, organized, and shared in a way that fits into the academic incentive structure. So what I've been working on with Senscience is fair square data management. And so what we've done is we've built a platform that provides a regular everyday scientist with an AI data steward. And part of this came from the fact that on all of the collaborations and all the grants that I've had over the last 20 years, it was always really hard to get data stewards. It's really hard to find them. There are great ones, but there's not enough. And so we really need to amplify the power of data stewards in terms of taking the data, organizing it, cleaning up, building a data package, creating a data portal, and then documenting it, writing a paper that documents the data set in a way that others can truly deeply understand the data, understand the context of how the data was produced, understand those deep nuances that really change the way the data is reused. And so we've built this platform as well as an open specification. So Fair Squared itself is an open specification. We'll be publishing it later this year. That once your data is kind of described in this metadata schema, and it's a knowledge graph schema that's compatible with ML Commons Croissant, then your data is directly AI ready. It can be loaded into TensorFlow, into JX, into PyTorch. It fits into the ecosystem of Kaggle and Hugging Face. So it kind of really fits into that whole world with all the tools that represents. But we also make sure that it's addressing the specific needs of scientific data with detailed methods linked in using provenance information to every data variable, making sure that the ethical reuse is well documented and the conditions there and the potential biases of the data set are also part of the data package. I think this is so essential that scientific data is responsibly reused and contains sufficient contextual information to be meaningfully reused. And then, of course, a key part of this process and where Frontiers manages the peer review process of the data article, the data portal, the data package. There's a validation process by which the data package is also validated to be conformant to a standard schema and certified. And all of this is intended to really show, we can put data out into the world in a trusted form and in a way that's really easy. And that's where the AI data steward you drag and drop your data sheets, spreadsheets, and your documentation, and it will work with you, with a human in the loop, to clean it up, organize it, and get it out into the world. There's an example online that I put here. It's launching later this year. Obviously, we've got a lot to learn from many different data use cases and lots of different communities. But for me personally, I think it's just so important that science respect and value data and get it out into the world. And so that's what I've been up to.
Amazing. Yeah. It's a thing that people don't think about enough. What is needed to make data sets really usable by AI? It's really easy to kind of walk right past that. I think it's a thing that a lot of people are confronting right now. And bravo to you, Sean, for putting your finger on that and building a solution to get us there. So very cool. All right. We will round out the conversation today with a presentation by Justin Kiggins.
Figure out where to unmute. Everybody can see this?
Yep.
Awesome. Yeah, so when I reflect on the past 6 months, in particular, I think one of the things that really strikes me is that we've had some breakthrough demonstrations of various AI scientist systems, that I think since the Chat GPT era and the like LLM era, there's been a lot of excitement around like what can LLMs do for us in the scientific process, and can it write our papers for us? Can it review the literature for us? And um, one of the things that I think has really been coming together over the last 6 months is some of these multi-agent systems that can really take on a much larger scope of the experimental design process um, you know, than have in the past. So some of the specific kind of like milestones that I want to call out was first and foremost back in February, Google Research shared out a nice blog post and white paper on their AI co-scientist system, um, which was a multi-agent system that was able to, design experiments proposing candidates for repurposing drugs, for novel target discovery, and some novel hypotheses for around antimicrobial resistance. Um, One of the interesting things with this is that that they were able to verify too with a lab that was doing similar work, that the hypothesis that their agent had landed on was actually very similar to what the was the same as what the lab had been working on and was getting ready to publish. Um, and this, I think, was kind of the first of what has ended up being a few similar characteristics. So Future House announced their Robin system, which similarly was able to identify kind of a candidate target for a particular disease, proposed a screening experiment. One of their researchers went to the wet lab, did the screening experiment, brought the results back to Robin, and Robin helped to narrow down on a drug candidate. Researchers at Stanford and the CZ Biohub built out a virtual lab system that was able to design SARS-CoV-2 nanobody binders, to Stephen's illusion around CRISPR systems. One of the some researchers at Stanford developed CRISPR GPT. This was just announced last week. And there's a bullet point in there that basically this is a multi-agent system that helps to design gene editing experiments. And it was basically they handed the tool to a junior researcher and asked them to go do the experiment in the lab. The junior researcher who had no experience doing gene editing experiments was able to successfully complete the experiment. So these tools are really starting to, I think to Mary's point, are starting to, um, you know, open up the what else could I do opportunities for scientists, and starting to point to aspects of the scientific process that we've assumed scientists themselves need to take on, but these systems are starting to take more of them on. Lila Sciences spun out of Flagship Pioneering with a $200 million seed round to start to develop these types of AI scientist factories. And there's open source tooling coming out to be able to support this as well. Um, and so I think that we're on the cusp of kind of a new scientific method. Kind of what I was speaking to is sort of this like these opportunities of these in silico experiments. So leveraging kind of multi-agent systems, LLMs, with scientific reasoning, scientific background, that can start to design and execute workflows. Um, you know, when the kind of on the other side, I think of these systems as sort of like simulating scientists or simulating biologists. And then on the other side, we have models that simulate biology itself. So this is the AlphaFold, ESM3, EVO2, Transcriptformer, AlphaGenome. These kind of generative large models that are trained on biological data. Um, One thing that we aren't haven't seen a lot of yet, but is starting to come online, is sort of the fusion of these two aspects of like biological models, leveraging biological models for generative work, it still takes a lot of effort to use AlphaFold 3. Like you still need, a fair bit of knowledge in using these. But I think these LLM systems are going to start decreasing those and making that easier. And then we have, these opportunities around real world experiments. So I mentioned Lila Sciences, startup Potato is doing work in this space as well. Ginkgo Bioworks has been doing this space around large scale automation. And so these in silico experiments are going to start to, the friction of, the future house example of making a prediction and somebody needing to go into the lab and actually execute that. We're going to be able to start having robots take on more of that in the future. And as we then start doing these experiments, I think that we're going to have an interesting opportunity to start to close this loop. This kind of, I think, touches on some of the things that Sean was speaking to, that like once these experiments start generating data that can improve these biological models, that can fill the gaps, that can tackle that out of distribution scenarios that these biological models aren't capturing. We're going to start getting into a really interesting world of these characteristics kind of driving some interesting feedback loops and accelerating some very new opportunities in science. So this is what I think we're on the cusp of, and I think the last 6 months have shown some major milestones towards that. So thank you.
Awesome. Awesome. Thank you, Justin. All right. So we have reached the part of the conversation where you guys ask questions. Please feel free to put them in the chat. There were some questions that came in from registrants prior to the session. So I'm going to pull one of those to get started. And it does actually nicely dovetail right where Justin left off. And the question was, I wonder, how does AI agent technologies and applications fit into the life science research and products ecosystem? Since Justin, you were the first to mention agents, I think it's good to have a conversation about it because it is also the most common buzzword that I hear. And everyone, I think, is also just sort of trying to speak intelligently about what the boundaries of an agent are. So I think we can all maybe go around and offer our perspectives. I can start. So, arguably OpenAI and ChatGPT kind of kicked us off into the space where we're in now, kind of elevated everybody's understanding of like, oh, wow, we can have some serious interactions now with an AI model that has a lot of knowledge built into it. They just released a product that they call Agents. And I actually think that, and if you haven't used it yet, because again, it's maybe a month old, that would be okay. But if you haven't had a chance to use it yet, I do think actually it does capture the idea of what an agent, could be going forward. It's more than just an LLM, okay? It has an LLM interface very often, but then the key is that as you get systems that are more and more agentic, they are connected to other digital systems and tools that are relevant to you, and they can break down your request into a chain series of actions that it might take with each of those functions. So for example, right now with connectors in OpenAI, you can connect your Google Drive, you can connect your CRM, and you can obviously connect it to the web. And so you can ask for something that involves going and searching the web, going and searching your CRM, going and searching your Drive, pulling that all together and giving you an answer that's the sum of all of those things, right? So obviously LLMs is a big part of that, but the agentic part is the part where it breaks down your instruction into knowing how to interact with each of those data sources and doing something intelligent with it, and then bringing it back. So that's a thing that now you can use for kind of anything in general. Obviously, it can have an impact on the life sciences as well. The more that those different data sources are made available to agents in this way. And I think that's just starting to happen. Things that are OpenAI driven are very, starting with the most popular tools. As it moves into AI, we're obviously going to need to have more specific interactions with specific tools, specific imaging tools, specific, protein and genome tools, specific biological model tools, right? And so the construction of those kinds of agents means setting the right connectors in place, and then of course doing the right work with data to populate them. So that would be my answer. But let's go around a little bit and see if you guys want to offer other ideas on the topic of AI agents in this space.
Yeah, I think one thing that was really, so I was at the ICML conference recently, and I think one thing that really struck me at several of the posters was just the innovation in different places where people are using agents. And I think that we're getting to the point where just about any role a scientist takes on, there might be an opportunity for them to like farm that out to an agent. So I think one of the more interesting ones that stood out to me was in a single cell data, trying to annotate cell types. And typically, this is a very heavily computational task. But basically, what they did was they said, okay, what are the most expressed genes for this cell, and then had an agent just read the internet and be like, all right, what like what cells are these? And like that was their method for doing annotation work, like relying on existing databases, inspecting the data, and so yeah, I think that you know there's a paper on agents to design new virtual cell models. And so, yeah, I think just about any particular role. And I think to your point, Stephen, also like with ChatGPT and with these things rolling out, just the barriers are getting lower and lower for researchers to try to figure out where they can plug in, an agent into some aspect of their workflow. So I think we're going to continue to be surprised at the new places that this gets tackled.
Maybe I'll pipe up. Actually, the platform that we've built is multi-agent agentic platform, and I see that really as a way of capturing different expertise for different stages of a workflow, right? That essentially you need different capabilities, and you need different background knowledge, and especially as we get into curating data for specific domains, you need domain specific agents as well, who kind of understand the specific data types and data requirements. And as well, I mean, there's been so much work done in the community over the years to come up with domain specific ontologies and domain specific data formats, and we don't want to reinvent any of that, right? We want to adopt it, but you need that expertise. So an agent can kind of come in with that expertise and actually help make the data align to the community standards. So I think that's where the necessity is to build these things as multi-agent systems. I just was going to address, Nicholas had a comment in the chat, just talking about like, do we need another like buzzword, another new standard for data, or why don't we just stick with FAIR, for example? And I think what part of what we're doing is we're trying to we want something that is validatable, something that is well defined, something that we know, for example, when is something fair? And I think the challenge has been that fair has been a set of good principles, but we needed something to kind of turn it into something precise, well-defined, that we could actually implement. And we're just adopting all open standards. We're not trying to invent any new specification there, but that's what the agent is doing, is essentially making everything fair according to different perspectives.
Yeah, I think we've all kind of covered this quite nicely. So yes, agents just essentially make different parts of the platform, right? Easy and accessible, and it's just linking those. So yeah, obviously this fits in really nicely in imaging and analysis and doing those sorts of things. And yeah, I will say putting some of these agents in, so this is all exciting and optimistic and amazing, love it. Something that we really have to think about, especially on my end, is maintaining, right? So images and your data, right? You can't put those completely online. You need to maintain data privacy in some way. You need to be able to keep your data private until you publish, right? And then you put it all out there. And so this is something that we always have to marry, right, when we go forward. And different groups have different priorities in these, but something to think about, right? So when you use these agents that are online, what are you putting out? And so on my end, how do we gate that a little bit, right? Make all of the tools accessible to everyone, make it able to use, but also don't put everything out there immediately until you're ready, right? So that's just my contribution there.
Totally.
Mhm.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody, for that one. I think that was great. Okay, we had a question that I think is a gift to the future as best we can. I don't know how I'm going to answer this one, so I might ask it and then see who picks up on it. But for a current graduate student or postdoc, what percentage of their time would you encourage trying to use, implement, troubleshoot AI tools versus focusing on their experiments and generating data? If wait, just scroll down. Okay. If spending time interacting with AI tools takes time to perfect and may not show up in CVs or publications, how do you price the benefits for trainees for their next steps? If spending time interacting with AI tools takes time to perfect and may not show up in
I
CVs.
think it's a great one. I
Yeah.
think we
So
can have some good debates here too. I think different people will have very different options. So I talked about it being really time consuming, and that is true, right? I will say that if you're not using AI in some capacity, I believe that your productivity won't be what it needs to be competitive in this landscape. So you have to use it at some point. But where do you put your time? Do you put your time into very specific tool-based things? Do you learn how to use LLMs or agents, right, to find the best tools for you and then implement them? I think that this generation now needs to start looking about how to do prompts, how to do those sorts of queries to find what's most useful, and then use, I don't want to shamelessly plug, but there are companies or groups that can make the tools more accessible, or even AI online tools, right? So making the tools easier to implement is definitely like getting them set up, getting the Python debugged, right? Like that's technical. Let someone else do that for you. Learn to prompt generate, learn to search, learn to accelerate your stuff. But let's open that up too to I don't know, to other debate. What do you
Yeah,
guys
and I
think?
feel like 15 years ago, it was the 15 years ago the same question was about learning Python or
Yeah.
like learning data science, right? Like I think it's a huge tension for grad students, and I have very deep deep empathy for this. I think my opinion here is, I cited some interesting articles of research groups building AI co-scientists. I would not recommend every graduate student to go out there and try to build an AI co-scientist to do their work for them. Um, you know, like unless that is going to be your thesis and you're in a group that can support you in doing so. But I think to Mary's point, like what are these things that like that you want to take the edge off, that like you find yourself doing repeatedly, they're a slog, it feels like it's time consuming, and it is not the like unique it's not the unique piece that you are bringing to your PhD into the scientific process. Like, see if you can get an agent to do that for you. See if you can get an agent to do that, that thing 100 times. So that would be my recommendation.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll just hop in. I would fully agree with both what Mary and Justin said. I think these are background skills. These are fundamental skills that you need to have just to stay competitive in the world moving forward. So I don't think it can be an either or. I think you've got to be investing in it, but of course the natural way is to find the application to your work, right, and find the relevance to your work and see how it can accelerate what you're doing. But it is moving fast. It's a struggle to keep up, but the more that you can process this and stay current, I think the better positioned you'll be for the future.
awesome. I'm gonna try to sneak one in before the end. Maybe make this the final question. And I think it just touches on this as well. So, do you think that AI will at some point replace scientific creativity, or will it be limited to just assisting the researcher's creativity process? So just to this question, and I'll start. And there was a podcast recently with Eric Weinstein. It was the Dire CEO podcast, and I thought he had a really interesting take on this, so I give him credit. You know, everything where there's like the ability to have large amounts of data or repetitive tasks are things that are going to likely be automated first, right? And it's the things where there's very limited data, where we haven't managed to generate data, things with data sets are very, very small, that humans are going to still need to be on top of that. And obviously that then will be a repetitive process of gathering more data about the things we don't have much data about. But perhaps that's the thing that the machines will never be able to do until they're able to, I don't know, identify whole new areas of data to go try to collect, right? So the scientific creativity may stay in this area of identifying areas to gather new data about, right? And then explore those new small data sets and then explode them into large data sets. And then once they're large data sets, they may, that may then allow the machines to take them over. So I liked that idea, to think about how much the data availability as the space for scientific creativity as we go into the future, and in a iterative way that keeps moving as we go forward. That's my thought. What do you guys think?
I'll just quickly. Mary, go ahead. Sorry.
Go for it.
Sorry, I just was inspired by Stephen. No, but I mean, just quickly, I think that the opportunity is that we can address scales that we aren't able to address now. And so by having these tools, by being able to manage the smaller scales that we're normally focused on, we can start to really make the larger connections and synthesis. And so it's a huge opportunity. It's a tremendous tool to accelerate and advance science across the scales that this complex system really requires.
So I'll try to be as fast as possible. I love the word creativity. So this is a little bit different maybe than Sean, your answer here. People think, oh, it will never replace because it won't think outside the box. It won't do these things, right? But have you asked it, first of all? And you should. And if you ask it to start to recognize patterns that maybe you didn't, I think that's a different type of creativity in a beautiful way that we can harness. So I just wanted to, I could go on this for a while. It's one of my happy soapboxes, but think about the word creativity and think about what that is. And then think about how you can use LLMs or deep learning or these things to find that and utilize that. And I think that opens up so many more exciting possibilities, especially with open data and these sorts of things, right? So no longer are you looking under the lamppost, right? You're going to look at everything and find cool patterns. So I think that's a fun thing.
Yeah, 100%. I think that the creativity, that's the unique aspect that scientists can bring to the table. There's a lot of ways that I think LLMs can help to, particularly in this generative world, can help to facilitate that creativity. I had a very interesting experience of being able to work with an artist who was like leveraging LLMs to, explore creative processes. And I think that there's a lot of opportunities there for not to undermine scientific work, but yeah, to leverage that. So
yeah.
I'm a huge fan of Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance. If anyone wants to get into the like epistemology of the stuff, but yeah.
Oh man, that was a really formative book for me too. All right, well, we've hit the top of the hour. Justin, Sean, Mary, so amazing to have you on. Thank you so much for your contributions. To everybody watching, thank you for joining us as well. We will be posting this afterwards on YouTube. And as always, feel free to sign up for the newsletter if you want to be on the cutting edge of what's happening each week. I'm sure all the speakers will be happy to field any questions outside of this as well, and make themselves available, as of course will I. Feel free to reach out to me, Stephen@metacell.us. So I'll close it out here, and have a great day, everybody.
Thanks a lot, everybody.